Greetings. My name is Ra Imhotep, broadcasting on behalf of 13signsastrology.com. Doing this video today on a topic that I've seen covered, from a couple YouTube videos, but I kind of wanted to give my perspective on what's going on with the Anunnaki in relationship to right now. Now, we do have a lot of scholars out there that talk about the Anunnaki. We had Zecharia Sitchin, which is a very popular scholar from Russia that decoded the Sumerian tablets, and he talks a lot about the Anunnaki. And then we also have a melanated brother by the name of Dr. Malachi Z. York, L, and he talked about the Anunnaki in depth as well. And both of these very intelligent brothers, yeah, I said brothers, and I know many people are like, well, you're a melanated person, why are you calling a Caucasian person a brother? And that's because really, like, dealing with that whole, I'm just going to put this out here for the record right now, like that whole concept of the white man being the devil and all of that, like, I don't subscribe to that. Like, I don't subscribe to that. I personally believe that we all have a higher self and a lower self, and we have the free will to decide which self we're going to live off of. We can either live off of the lower self, or we can live off the higher self. If you choose to live off the lower self, then you're a devil. If you choose to live off the higher self, then you're a god. So that's basically how I look at it. Now, back to my point. So we had a lot of brothers out there, Zecharia Sitchin, Dr. Malachi Z. York, L, that dealt with the Anunnaki, and both of these figures are basically not amongst us right now as far as putting out information currently. So I get a lot of inquiries of people asking me, and even in my own meditations, it always comes up where it's like I need to address what the Anunnaki are doing right now in present day and times, and that's what this video is about. What are the Anunnaki doing in present day times, and how are we to look at them on a modern day? Now, the Anunnaki presently, what they're doing is that those of you that don't know, I'm going to give you a little rundown on the Anunnaki. The Anunnaki were the beings that were responsible for cloning, or for producing what you would call the modern day Homo sapiens. This was a group called the Anunnaki. Now, they were responsible for this. So basically, when a lot of people deal with the whole Anunnaki subject and the Anunnaki topic and the Anunnaki information, they basically kind of like bring it from a perspective that the Anunnaki are the Elohim, and the Anunnaki were the actual gods, or the angels, or the gods, or whatever you want to put it, that the book of Genesis spoke about when it talks about let us make man in our image and our likeness. So this is basically like the modern day, I guess you could say the modern day explanation on the role of the Anunnaki and exactly who they were, and not only that, but how human beings were made. I mean, that's a lot to think about or whatever, but like basically what this whole Anunnaki story has done is kind of like, it's basically a better story than what religion had to bring us. So you can kind of call this like the modern day scriptures or whatever. Like, this is, I mean, it's no 100% proof as far as factual proof that when I say that, I mean there is factual proof, but there is no like proof that has been accepted publicly that the Anunnaki were indeed the beings that created us in their image and after their likeness. But at the same time, it's definitely a really good mythological story at best to even those that don't believe in it, and to those that did any research on it. We already know that this is basically the factual story. Like, this is the facts behind the Genesis story. This is the facts behind the story about the Elohim, or the us that created man or whatever. And this is the aspect that religion forgot to address, because they didn't include this in their religious books and in their different scriptures and things of that nature. So that's what this whole like Anunnaki story is about. So let me just get back to it. So the whole history behind it is the Anunnaki were the ones that created man in their image and in their likeness. And basically, this is where you get the term Adam from, because the term Adam, if you research it or whatever, it comes from the term Adama. Adama means like clay or mud or whatever you want to call it. So basically, this Adam was basically came from the earth, and the Anunnaki breathed into this atom of their spirit and in their lightness. So when they breathed into the Anunnaki, they animated this clay or this mud and turned it into a living soul or living being. So in essence, when you translate this is basically saying that the Anunnaki gave us their soul. So we start talking about soul, the soul originates, our soul, as far as human soul, originates from the Anunnaki, because this was their stamp of approval, or their signature that they put upon humanity. So in essence, we are basically kind of like demigods or whatever. The Anunnaki breathed into us of their soul, and we became a living soul. This is what the Bible says or whatever. So they animated us. So in essence, they gave us our soul. So the Anunnaki are basically the gods that created man in their image and in their likeness. Now, there were other alien genetics that were involved in that creation, but the Anunnaki put their stamp of approval and their seal on it. It's kind of like if you manufacture a car, right? Like you might have parts in the car that are from America. You might have parts in the car that are from Brazil. You might have parts in the car that are from China. But if this car was manufactured in China and it was done under the leadership of the Chinese, then this car will be considered a Chinese vehicle. Or if this car was manufactured in Japan and it was done up under the leadership and up under the guidance of the Japanese, then this car would be a Japanese vehicle. Well, this is the same thing that the Anunnaki did. The Anunnaki, basically what they did was that they created us, and they were the ones responsible for it because it was their project. So they kind of like took the credit for creating us or whatever. So we are their creation. And even though you had other alien species that were a part of this creation, you had 23 different alien species that were part of this creation, the Anunnaki were the chief scientists. So this is basically the history behind the Anunnaki in relationship to man. Now, the Anunnaki has done a lot more than that, but basically this is their history. Now let me go into what's going on with the Anunnaki today. Now, a lot of you know that basically Enki, when he created us, Enki was the chief Anunnaki scientist that was behind creating us. And when he basically created us, he did this against the council's approval. He went against the council to do this. So this caused a beef between the Anunnaki, between Enki and Enlil. Now, Enlil, he was the leader of the Galactic Federation of Light, or the council at that time. He was what you would call the Most High to us on the planet. He was what they call Anu at the time. It was Enki. It was Enlil that was Anu at the time. And Enki was his brother. Enki was basically his brother because they had the same father. Their father was Anu, the real Anu of the heavens. So, I know you're like, well, I thought you just said that Anu was basically Enlil. He was the leader of the heavens. Well, when you deal with the term Anu, that's a title just like president. So you got the Anu that's over the Galactic Confederation of Light, which basically is a federation that kind of like oversees all of the different galaxies and the planets within those galaxies. Is a federation for that. And then you have Anu, who is the Most High over like all the heavens, not just the galaxies, but the universes and all of that. So that's Anu. You know what I'm saying? He's over basically the multiverse in and of itself. That's Anu. So, getting back to my point or whatever, you had Enki, who basically created us against the council's approval. He went against the Galactic Federation of Light's approval to create us. And he did this because of the way the story goes, because basically they were too lazy to work the gold fields on their own. So they basically wanted to create a slave or a willing participant to basically work these and mine these fields for them. And pretty much when they did that, they took an emotional attachment to their species that they created, which was humans. They created emotional attachment to us. Yes, the Anunnaki has emotions, and they basically had an emotional attachment to us. So in that emotional attachment, they decided that they wanted us to live. Those particular scientists that took part in creating us, which was Enki and Ninti and Nergal and Arish Nergal, were all basically the chief scientists that took place in creating human beings. So basically they did this against the Galactic Confederation's approval, and they took sympathy towards us. So when the Galactic Confederation found out about this, they decided to kill human beings. And this is where you read about God saying that he's going to destroy you for your sins and your wickedness. The reason for this is because human beings were considered the children of the universe at this time. Like, we were the children, so we were like childlike. And the Anunnaki basically didn't really have the patience for this. Like, they didn't have the patience for this at all. So they were looked at us like children and said they're different. Anunnaki is very ruthless. So they were like, And when I say they, I'm talking about Enlil, because he didn't have any emotional attachment to humans because he didn't take part in this. So to him, it was just like if you kind of like your house is infected with roaches or whatever, and you don't have any emotional attachment to roaches. You hate roaches because you're not a roach. You don't understand the plight of a roach. So you decide you're going to exterminate them, because that's basically, you're like, I'm going to exterminate them. So that's how that's how Enlil looked at humans. Like we were just like some type of worked out species to him, and he would like just kill them. So that's how he looked at it. But Enki, on the other hand, he took an emotional attachment. Him and Ninti and Nergal and Arishnagal, they took a liking to humans because, they're a part of themselves in making us. So just like you take a liking to your child, you don't want to see your child die. So to them, they were, we were their children, but to Enlil, we were just some creatures. So basically, they decided to kill us, the council. And this was, at the time, Enlil, who was the head of the council. He decided to exterminate us, to wipe us out. So Enki didn't like this. So he came and told, the chiefs of the humans at the time, or those humans that showed the most nobility. Because, don't get me wrong, Enki didn't approve of all humans. Certain humans didn't show nobility. So Enki didn't approve of those humans that didn't show nobility. He only approved of those humans that were like the nobles and that were like, reflected him. Like just like a father will favor the children that reflect him. I'm not saying whether this is right or wrong, but we know men do this all the time. I'm telling you basically how the nature that we have comes from the Anunnaki. So just like you have certain men that only show favor upon the children that reflect him, or the father he finds his favor as the one that reflects him, whether it's a male or a female, it doesn't matter. Some fathers out there, they show favoritism to the child that reflects them. Well, that's basically the same way Enki was. He was like, he chose Noah at the time or whatever. He was like, Noah reflects me, so basically I'm going to save him and his family. So he told him about the flood, because that was the first plan that the Anunnaki had in destroying us, was the flood of Noah. Now, basically what happened after that is that Enki basically told, I know I'm kind of dragging the story on, so let me go ahead and get to it. Enki basically told humanity about what was going to happen. So we got saved or whatever, humanity wise, and a group of humans got saved. When you read about the story of Noah, you're reading about a tribe or a group of humans that got saved from a certain catastrophe that took place, a flood. And in this flood, there was several floods on this earth or whatever. The first flood was actually before the Anunnaki even got here, when the earth was covered with water. Now the second flood was dealing with the flood of Atlantis, which some people argue it was either 5,000 or 10,000 years ago or whatever. That was the flood of Atlantis, and I'll do a video on Atlantis to talk more about that. But in the flood of Atlantis, the reason why that flood took place, a lot of people say, is because of the making of human beings, and basically the project got out of hand. So that's when the council voted against us, and they decided to send a flood in against human beings. So this is kind of like why when you set the stage for a lot of humans not really liking the Anunnaki and stuff like that. It's a lot of people out there that don't like the Anunnaki. Now me, I'm just offering you biased information. I'm not saying that I'm with the Anunnaki or anything like that. I'm just basically telling you the story, and I'm going to tell you where they are today. But there's a lot of humans out there that don't like them because they feel like the Anunnaki doesn't like us, because they don't like us as a species. And I can see where they come from, but like I said, I'm biased. I'm just offering information. So the flood happened, we lived, and that's basically the story behind, the history behind it as far as our connection to the Anunnaki. So the Anunnaki ended up leaving the planet. Enki left the planet. He took those Anunnaki with him, and he had to go do time on his planet. Now, a lot of people weren't familiar with that. Enki had to go do time on his planet for what he did. He had to, basically, he owed down. He had to do time. So he did a certain amount of time. Now, Enki, from my research, Enki is free now. He is free. He is not in jail. He did his time. And basically what's going on now is that the Anunnaki is getting ready to come back. They're getting ready to come back, and they already have started psychically communicating with certain individuals on the planet, and with even certain alien interterrestrial beings on the planet, or what most people would call aliens, like greys and stuff like that. But these are really interterrestrial beings. They've already started communicating with certain interterrestrial beings, and certain interterrestrial beings are doing work for them. Now they've also sent the Pleiadians ahead of them. And the Pleiadians are basically, what they're doing is they're paving the way for the ET races to come back to the planet. And the Anunnaki is basically the chiefs of these ET races or whatever, but they're not talking about the real ET races, not these extraterrestrial beings that been here, like what most people saying they're seeing aliens, they're seeing beings that already live on this planet, like your Greys, your reptilians, your Deros, your Tyros, your Shaggies, or some people call Bigfoots or Yetis. All of those different races already live on this planet. So I'm not talking about, those are what I call extraterrestrial beings, but I'm talking about a new race of beings that a lot of people haven't came to encounter with, and these are your Anunnaki beings, and they're already taking on, they're communicating with certain humans, they're communicating with certain extraterrestrial beings, they're communicating with even certain animal spirits right now, and they're coming back and they're even working through the elements. Now eventually they're going to manifest and come back like physically, you know what I'm saying, but right now they're communicating, and they'll be back really soon. And what they're doing is they're even taking over and stealing weapons from the military. Like, this is going on right now. You can Google, I mean, you can actually Google this or YouTube this, I should say. You can YouTube the Anunnaki taking nuclear weapons, and you'll see, like, it's videos out there talking about this. The Anunnaki are taking weapons from the U.S. The U.S. has lost over 9 different deadly nuclear type weapons that are fueled by like hydrogen or whatever. They've already lost a certain amount of weapons already. The United States has. So the Anunnaki, the Anunnaki behind this, they're channeling in because they're getting ready to basically take back control or whatever. And a lot of people say, well, they made us or whatever, so are they going to let us live? No. What the Anunnaki decided to do basically is that those human beings that make the shift and reflect the Anunnaki and basically are Anunnaki and living out the image and the likeness in the Anunnaki, those human beings will basically make it. And these are basically human beings that become gods. So when I say live like the Anunnaki, it's not that you have to exactly pattern yourself after the Anunnaki. It's just that you have to show nobility, like I was talking about earlier. So those human beings that are going to show nobility, and nobility to them is equal to basically purity of your genes and purity of your spirit and your expression. So those groups of human beings that are going to show purity in their expression and in their genes and in their genetics and basically their diet and like real life tangible stuff, you know what I'm saying, like, and show purity in their way and basically how they deal with people, and nobility is showing that they aren't just your average human out there. These type of human beings are going to be spared by the Anunnaki. Now those type of human beings that they consider like followers that are letting the elites control them and basically living up under certain groups and categories of people and being controlled and things of that nature, you're not really a god to them. So they look at you basically like somebody basically that can be disposed of. So those are the human beings that are going to be disposed of. Now Anunnaki is working with the Illuminati. There's certain members of the Anunnaki right now working with what you would call the Illuminati. And I know you're like, well, I thought they didn't like them and I thought they were reptilians and all of that. Well, you got to remember, it's all about being initiated into the Galactic Confederation or not. You don't necessarily, to be initiated into the Galactic Confederation of Light doesn't necessarily mean you agree with everything and all the politics of it. But at the end of the day, if you're initiated, you're initiated. It's just like if you were a Mason. If you're initiated into a certain Masonic lodge, you might not agree. If you're in the Yorkites, you might not agree with everything in the Scottish Rite. Or if you're a Printar, you might not agree with everything in the 4-letter lodges. But at the end of the day, you know what I'm saying, you still look at that brother as a Mason, and you basically still will give them the same type of love that you would give any other type of Mason. And if you throw up a certain sign, certain Masons are going to help you. So that's the same way, like the way the Galactic Federation is. They might not agree on a day-to-day level, but at the end of the day, believe this, all these aliens that are coming to this planet are already initiated to the Galactic Federation. So there's already order established in the universe. It's only here where there's not order. This is where the big war and where the big fight is. It's right here. And humans' part is, like I said, to show nobility, to show that they're ready to get initiated to the Galactic Confederation. If they don't, they're going to allow these humans to basically get trapped into the 3rd dimension, because the Earth is going to the 4th dimension. So some people will not even really get a chance to see the Anunnaki, believe it or not. They're only going to reveal themselves to people that have already initiated themselves into the 4th dimension. And that's right, I said initiated, because just like you have secret societies and orders on the planet, you have dimensional orders. That's right, dimensional orders. You have ascended masters that initiate you just like a worshipful master in a Masonic lodge would initiate someone. So these are the type of things that are going to be happening when the Anunnaki come back to this planet. It's like you're either going to be a noble, meaning that you take responsibility for your own life. It doesn't mean you have to agree with everything the Anunnaki does. I'm not saying that. It just means that you're willing to take responsibility for your own life, Or are you going to be basically one that allows yourself to be controlled? And if you're controlled, then whatever happens to you as far as the 2/3 of the population get wiped out from diseases. So if you were intelligent, you wouldn't fall victim to that. If you were intelligent, if you were a god, you wouldn't fall victim to that. So all of that type of stuff that they say is going to happen, that type of stuff is only going to happen to people that stay up under the guidance of the Illuminati. And even people that are angry at the Illuminati, it doesn't matter if you're angry. It's just like being angry at your parents. Just because you're angry doesn't mean you're not controlled by them. Not being controlled by them is basically not dealing with the doctrine they deal with. Deal with another doctrine. Don't deal with their world. It's not even about anger. You respect them, but at the same time, you don't deal in their world. So if you decide you want to stay up under that control and those beings control, then those beings are going to be responsible for you and they're going to kill you. So though they may be initiated to the Galactic Confederation, they're not going to allow you to be initiated because they're using you as their slaves. You see, that's basically how it works. So that's what the Anunnaki's doing right now. They're on their way back or whatever. They're already channeling beings. Inky did his time. They already basically made amends as to how they're going to deal with the human problem. And that's where we at today, folks. The Anunnaki 2013. Basically, well, on up into 2013. So we'll see what happens after that point. But until we meet again, I'll leave you in peace in paradise.